Since consciousness is involved, if once I feed you with an idea that you are susceptible to something, look, I can feed you with an idea that this pill that we just got from the pharmaceutical company, it's the greatest, best thing for your issue. And I give you this pill and you get better. And then later you find out it was a sugar pill and everybody goes, yeah, that's called the placebo effect. And I go, what does it really mean? I said, you didn't get healed by the pill, you got healed by the belief in the pill. And I go, well, yeah, that's what placebo is all about. And at least 1/3, minimum of 1/3 of all medical intervention is, it's a placebo effect where the healing comes from. And everybody goes, yeah, I know about the placebo. I go, yeah, but that's a result of positive thinking. What about negative thinking? And this is what we don't talk about, but the reality is it's equally powerful in regard to affecting your biology as is positive thinking, but it works in the opposite direction. A negative thought is called the nocebo effect. Can cause any disease and you can die. If you believe you're going to die, you can die from the belief. So we really have to watch out because, as psychologists would tell us, 70% or more of our thoughts are negative and redundant, replaying the same negative thoughts. I go, if thoughts had nothing to do with it, fine. But thoughts, positive or negative, shape our biology. And all of a sudden it says, well, now it's time to wake up because our negative thinking is manifesting a negative life experience. When I say genetic control, that's the belief that genes control our characters. When I say epigenetic control, almost sounds the same, but epi means above. So when I say epigenetic control, literally it's control above the genes. And this is what we now recognize, that the environment, and very specifically our perception of the environment, changes our genetic activity. So that means, well, wait, that's not a victim because I can change my environment, I can change my perception, and all of a sudden, if I can do that, then I can control my genes. Well, we're going from victim to mastery. When parents have one child, they raise it like the first child. Okay, I raised the child this way. After that, if they have a second child, well, they already have all the different experiences of having a child, so they raise the second child different than they did the first child, et cetera, to the third. What's the point is, well, I can start with the same genetics, like my stem cells, same genetics, but it's the environment in which the genes are found that will determine the character and expression. Yeah, now what people have to understand about epigenetics is it changes the reading of the gene. It does not change the gene. Right. If you're born with gene X, you're always going to have gene X, but how will it express itself? And I go, well, it depends on your life and your character, your behavior, your environment. And this is why getting a gene readout, getting your card and reading your genes. Actually, one of the head researchers in the Human Genome Project, upon receiving his own gene readout, it was a quote, and he said he laughed when he read this, because he said, by looking at that, I can't tell if I have blue eyes or brown eyes. I can read all the genes, but I can't tell you what the outcome is going to be because it's genes plus environment. If it was just genes, I would be able to tell you exactly here's what's going to happen. But most of that is changeable by how you live and where you live. And as a result, there's only about 7 diseases that are caused by one gene, such as hemophilia, cerebral palsy is another one, Tay-Sachs disease is one. So you got about 7 major diseases, only one gene. If you got that gene and the gene card shows it, okay, you got that gene, you're going to deal with it. All the other diseases are multiple genes. Cancer is a minimum of 12 to 14 genes, so it's not an accident. You can't change one gene and get cancer. You have to change 12 to 14 genes, and all of a sudden, then probability is a chance? It's like, no, we are creating a cancer, and we can uncreate a cancer. People have spontaneous remissions, but they change it not by changing their biology, but by changing their mind. Separate genes in 2 aspects. There's genes that make a physical body, so that's like the robotic. Here it is, it's a machine, okay? But there are genes on how it's going to behave and how it's going to respond and what kind of issues it's going to face. Those are the changeable ones that we change from day to day, your behavior and the consequences of your behavior, okay? It's not changing the genes, it's changing the readout. So the simple point is, a gene is a blueprint. Right away, this is the biggest problem in the world because the idea of a gene must be an illusion to a lot of people. There's something called a gene and it turns on and off. And it goes, no, let's clear this up. A body is made out of 100,000 different protein building blocks. It's sort of like a giant Lego kit. 100,000 different pieces. You can assemble the pieces this way, make a muscle cell, assemble them this way, make a brain cell. Different pieces, you can plug them together. The pieces are called proteins. They're very complex. The question is, where the heck do the proteins come from? And the answer is, the DNA is a blueprint to make a protein. This is where things get dicey after that for this reason. It's a blueprint. That's exactly what it is. And I say, why is it relevant? I say, well, you go into an architect's office and she's working on a blueprint. You lean over her shoulder and you say, excuse me, is your blueprint on or off? And she'd look at you and go, what, are you crazy? It's a blueprint. There's no on or off. Precisely. A gene is a blueprint. It has no ability to turn itself on or off. A gene doesn't know what the hell it does. And the idea is giving all this power to a blueprint has been an error all these years. It's not the blueprint that we're concerned about. It's the contractor who reads the blueprint. And I say, well, what in my biology is the contractor? I go, the mind. Let's relate my laboratory experience to a human body so that we can connect it. A stem cell is an embryonic cell. We have billions of stem cells in our body right now. I don't care what age you are. The reason is very simple. Every one of us, every day, loses hundreds of billions of cells, normal attrition, normal death. I mean, just in the time we were talking, we probably lost 1 billion red cells in that time. And you got to replace 1 billion red cells. The lining of the digestive tract, 20-some feet of lining, the cells are replaced every 3 days. Well, that's, nearly 1 trillion cells. It's like, well, every day we're losing hundreds of billions. How many days in a row can you go if you don't replace? And the answer is not very far. So I say, oh, well, we have stem cells, embryonic cells, that will replace them. So that's what a stem cell is. Okay. So I put a stem cell in a petri dish, it's an embryonic cell, and I make culture medium. And this is really important because we're going to talk about the connection. The culture medium is the equivalent of blood. If I grow human cells, I look at human blood, the composition, and try to make a version of it in a lab. If I grow mouse cells, I look at mouse blood and make a medium to grow mouse cells in. So I make the medium, and since I'm making it, I can change some of the composition. I'm synthesizing it. That's what I did. So here's the story, very simple. I put one stem cell in a petri dish by itself, and it divides every 10 or 12 hours. So first there's 1, then there's 2, 4, 8, 16, doubling. 1 week, 30,000 cells in the petri dish. But they're all genetically identical because they came from one parent. So I have 30,000 genetically identical cells. I split the cells into 3 petri dishes, so I have genetically identical cells in 3 dishes. But I changed the composition of the culture medium, a little chemistry change, in each of the dishes. So I have genetically identical cells, but slightly different culture medium. And in one set of dishes, the cells form muscle. In a second set, they form bone. In a third set, the cells form fat cells. You say, well, what controlled the fate? I say, they were all genetically identical. So it wasn't the genes, they all had the exact same genes. The only thing that was different was the environment. Right, but it was a reflection of the environment. So the cell is adjusting itself to the environment. Change the environment, it changes its adjustment. Every time a scientist has come up with a new idea, that scientist was always claimed as being weird or crazy or, way off track. And then those new ideas come in. Howard Temin.
Or sometimes they're just the weirdo.
Well, yeah, that's where you got to have to distinguish. Where does weirdo leave off and interesting person begin? Okay, and the fact was this: my research was repeatable every day, and you could predict it. The point about that is, in science, prediction means you understand something. If you can predict it before you do it, then you have some insight. My predictions were always accurate. It just didn't fit the conventional storyline, and there was a choice. It is a science. It's a hard science, and it's the leading edge. Now, I'll tell you where the problem comes from. Not so much the scientists, but the pharmaceutical industry. And the reason why this becomes important is because the pharmaceutical industry runs the show in medicine. And if you could put this kind of healing that I'm talking about into a capsule or tablet, they'd be talking about it right now. But this is a consciousness healing, and you can't sell it. And so what's the result? They're not interested in it. And they, through their money, which is massive, actually determine the curriculum in a medical school. And the idea is, well, what's relevant? Well, if you understand epigenetics, you don't need the pharmaceutical industry. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, that's not in the interest of the, one of the biggest industries on this planet to say, you can heal yourself without drugs? And I go, absolutely. Well, we have to recognize, number one, that 95% of our behavior is coming from subconscious. So a child is going to record for 7 years. And they're going to record you. You have a new baby. That baby is going to look at you because you are the parent. The first thing a baby learns in the first week or two of life, who's the parent? Very important, because that's the reference point. If anything goes in their life, they're going to look at the parent first thing. A child on a playground is on a swing, falls off the swing on the ground. First thing it does is look at the parent. If the mother's like, ha, the kid starts crying. But if the mother goes, get up and get back on the swing, the kid gets back up on the swing. It's reflection. So you have to recognize a child is going to observe every move of you. Then you also have to recognize, well, hell, if 95% of it is coming from my invisible programming, I'm going to pass on the family pattern unconsciously 95% of the day.